What's up, Navigating Academia family? This is Dr. J. Phoenix Singh coming to you to be able to answer a valued viewer's question. Appreciate you guys as always. Please do, before we get started, smash that like button and make sure to comment below if you enjoyed this video. Helps us out a ton with the YouTube algorithm. Also, make sure to subscribe if you're not already in our community. We would love to have you here with us. We've got crazy growth going on right now. We had an 800% increase in our subscriber count last year, and I'm hoping to be able to get at least a 100% subscriber jump again here in 2021. So love having you guys here on the journey with me. You guys know me. My number one priority is to help as many people as possible. You guys can facilitate that in just so many ways, but the least of which is just to be able to like the video, to be able to get more eyeballs on these videos because of the YouTube algorithm. So here we go. The question for today comes from SP. So guys, make sure if you have a question, make sure to just kind of put whatever you want me to call you kind of like at the end of it. I know that some people have written to me and they give me like a fake name and all. That's fine. But it just gives me something to call you. I'd appreciate it. And remember, if you guys have any questions that you would like me to answer, put them down in the comment section below. If it's worded in a way to make it high sensitivity so that as many people as possible who are our thousands of subscribers would enjoy listening to an answer to it, then I'll try to make a response video like this. But if it's really high specificity, then I'm going to ask you guys to book a one-on-one consultation session with me, and you can get to the consult link via the Publication Academy website right down here. If you guys haven't checked out Publication Academy, it literally just came out this month. Please do take a look. It's www.publicationacademy.com. It is the number one most important thing I've ever done in my entire life. You guys know how much I care about you. I specifically built this thing for you. Website is freaking baller, so make sure to check it out, okay? And it's over 120 hours of how-to writing tutorials for academic publishing. It's the best thing I've ever done. Please check it out if you like my stuff. So here we go. The question from SP is this. It was a question that was posted on the video called Publish or Perish. Yes, here's why. Life as an academic writer. You know, I used to hire somebody to kind of like come up with names for the videos and all. Like, I would never write that. But apparently it's optimized for YouTube. So clearly I don't know what I'm doing. But, you know, we seem to be doing pretty well even with my lack of knowledge on YouTube. So, okay. Basically what I was talking about in that is the concept of publish versus perish. What does it mean and so forth. So if you've never heard of that concept, go watch that video. I hope it's a pretty good one. So I know that for the thumbnail, I don't know if you guys can see or not. I'm going to try to blow it up so I can show it to you. For the thumbnail, there we go. For the thumbnail, I put this piece of like gaffer tape or whatever over my mouth and like immediately regretted it because I used to have, if you guys watch some of the old episodes, I had this like big old bushy beard and I put this tape on my face. I'm like, bro, you idiot. I'm like, now you gotta rip this thing off. Luckily it didn't take much hair with it, but still, you know, I immediately recognized that that was a poor decision. So there you go. All right. Single guy logic, right? Here we go, SP. Hi, Dr. Singh, great video. Do you think that a publish or perish culture has a negative effect on the quality of research? And then there's two sub-points. Let's go to number one. Number one, if researchers constantly fear that they don't publish enough to continue their career, they might be tempted to take one or two shortcuts, which could render the research useless. 100%, SP, 100%, all right? There's actually a name for this. It's called the Fudge Factor, right? Which is an actual thing. And the idea here is that it's kind of a cognitive bias. And the idea is that it's not that people, and there are some to be honest, but it's so rare that people are sitting around and intentionally saying, I'm going to like, and fudging, if you don't know what that is in English. So to fudge something means that like, you know, you kind of tweak it a little bit. So it's not what it's supposed to be. It's like, that data, it could go like this. It could go like this. I'll just make it go like that. That's fudging something. Okay. That's just the verb that we use. So the fudge factor is the idea that, you know, sometimes in academia, people fudge things. And if you want to learn more about like these sorts of ethical conflicts, there's actually a Publication Academy module all about ethical best practices in conducting and publishing research by my buddy Jacob Waldenmeyer, who's a professor at Ursuline College. So make sure you check that module out. Again, publicationacademy.com. Yes, that's absolutely a thing. There are some very famous cases where people have created fake data sets, or they've basically, you know, the two most common things that you see happening are data mining and p-hacking. And if you don't know what those are, the basic concept between the two of them is that, you have a large, massive data set, and then you just keep running analyses until you find statistically significant results, is the basic idea, right? So you keep doing different sets of analyses in different ways, then eventually you find statistically significant results, right? So this is kind of like data mining. And then p-hacking, there's all sorts of ways that you can basically artificially manufacture. P is less than 0.05, which is kind of the traditional threshold that Jacob Cohen didn't come up with that threshold in terms of like statistical testing per se. He came up with it in light of what's called statistical power. If you guys ever want me to explain a specific statistical concept, right, just put it down in the comments below, but just make it something that everybody would be interested in. I've made videos in the past on H-indexes and different types of bibliometrics, impact factor, and this kind of stuff. Just don't ask me to explain like correlation. If you've got something or whatever that's kind of more on this side of things, like statistical power, which can be a little bit hard to explain, then just ask and I'll see if I can make a video on it. I'm very open. If you guys ask me to make a video on something like I know what propensity scoring is, I've been involved in projects where it's involved in. If you guys ask me what's propensity scoring, I can't give you a comprehensive breakdown on it, right? So if I don't know something, I'm going to tell you guys. I'm not going to sit around here and charade it like I know everything, because I don't, right? So in any case, but yes, and does it make the research useless? I would argue it makes it worse than useless, because when it's put out there, it's being presented as legitimate. And we have a huge replicability crisis, like a reproducibility crisis in psychology right now, and in science in general. In some of the harder sciences, as well as things like engineering, so like some of these STEM fields, it is perceived to be less of a problem according to surveys. There's a very famous set of surveys that was published in Nature within the last 10 years here, asking people, do you believe that there's a reproducibility crisis in your field? And sure enough, in the social sciences, it seemed to be way more of a problem than in kind of the harder sciences, including STEM fields like engineering. So that's number one. Number two, I also believe that a publisher-perish culture disadvantages women from pursuing a scientific career, as they tend to be more self-critical and consequently publish less. So this is interesting, and I remember when I read this the first time and I was trying to kind of, think about what are my thoughts on that. And there's no doubt, based on the personality psychology literature, that men and women are more similar than they are different. There's no doubt about that. But there are still significant differences. What I always like to say is that men and women, and when I say men and women in this context, I am operationalizing that as a man being an XY chromosomally structured individual, and XX being a woman, right? That is how I'm operationalizing it for the sake of this video. So the idea here is that essentially XXXY, right? Largely what happens is that between 4 to 6 weeks during gestation, when the baby is grown inside mom's tummy, what ends up happening is that there's a little kind of genetic switch that ends up going on depending on whether or not you've got that Y chromosome, which either floods the body with testosterone, right? Or it does not, right? The developing body. Of the child in your belly, right? And essentially this does a ton of things, and it changes the way that the brain is structured. It changes the routes with which information travels within the brain. So even though volumetrically speaking, things may be similar in certain proportions in certain areas of the brain, yes, there are different tracks that the information takes to be able to get to those ends. There's certain things, for example, like women's, if you do cadaver studies and you take a look, what you find is that women are like super smellers, because in terms of the average woman's olfactory bulb, it's 40% and 50%. I believe it is 40% heavier and has 50% more connections, or it could be 50% heavier and 40% more connections. I forget. But there's all sorts of things like this, right? So men and women, I would argue, are more symmetrical than they are identical. And there's important differences, and these differences manifest themselves in different ways, right? So the point that SP makes here is, again, I'll reread it, okay? I also believe that a publisher-perish culture disadvantages women from pursuing a scientific career, as they tend to be more self-critical and consequently publish less. Okay. Again, interesting concept. Definitely in terms of Big Five personality theory, women are significantly more agreeable than men. Agreeable doesn't mean that like people agree to things, right? Agreeableness is essentially what is the principal way via which individuals in their lives deal with conflict. For more disagreeable individuals, it's competition, and for more collaborative individuals, it is collaboration. Okay, sorry. For more agreeable people, it is collaboration, right? And this is one of the reasons why meta-analytically, what you find is that women make better CEOs, right? Now, there are fewer female CEOs, right, or women CEOs. However, it's certainly the case meta-analytically that that's what you end up finding. And there's so many reasons why that is, right? And I think it is overly simplistic to suggest, talking about toxic masculinity and patriarchal and these sorts of things. That is a conversation for another day. I don't have those conversations, right? I have very serious thoughts on using terminology like that, which I will not be sharing, right? So we're going to avoid that in the comments, or I'm going to block you from the channel, okay? Seriously, I take it really, really seriously. I run a men's ministry. The amount of damage that's been done to a lot of men based on, that kind of stuff is really, really bad, okay? So we're not going to have that conversation. Okay, so, but do I think that the agreeableness issue actually manifests itself somehow in terms of people, or women in particular, I guess, here, in terms of what SP is saying, disadvantaging them because they're more self-critical, right? So women certainly are higher anxiety than men are in the aggregate. This manifests in all sorts of ways. One of the ways it manifests itself is that the point prevalence of major depression in women in graduate school and having depression anxiety disorders, it's crazy. That's 44%. In men, it's 38%, right? So about a 15% difference there, right? If you kind of take a look at the differences between those percentages. And so that's one of the many ways that this kind of manifests itself, but there is more anxiety. But the question is, what do we do with the anxiety, right? I like to say that anxiety is like an arrow, and if you allow it to, it will point you in a certain direction, right? I would not say that it's kind of just women. I would just say that it's individuals who tend to be more estronergic, right? Because estronergic individuals are individuals who they tend to be more empathic. They're more agreeable, basically, right? Than anything else. The average man has 10 to 20 times more testosterone than the average woman does. However, this is a nomothetic thing. So you also have idiographic cases where you have women with significantly more testosterone, and those individuals tend to be more disagreeable, right? In other words, being agreeable or disagreeable to a large extent is just a proxy for how estronergic or testosteronergic an individual's brain is, okay? And this is determined by a variety of prenatal factors, okay? So anyway, this is me going on. Look at me, little science nerd dude. Okay, so it is what it is. But in terms of consequently publish less, that's the one that I would disagree on, right? The question at the end of the day is whether or not, and there is insufficient research to suggest this, because if you want to make that point, then we have to ask whether or not the prevalence of imposter syndrome is higher in women than it is in men. And right now, so I've done research on imposter syndrome. We did a deep dive into this for one of my colleagues. He's a genius. His name's Paul Sutter. He's fabulous. Love me some Paul. And for Publication Academy, he goes in doing a deep dive into the research literature on the prevalence of and also evidence-based techniques for overcoming imposter syndrome. So make sure that you take a look at that, right, if you have not already. And that's going to be a course that is called Fundamentals of the Publication Writing Process on publicationacademy.com. Take a look. So in any case, that is what I would recommend taking a look at, because we don't have a lot of research on imposter syndrome, and that is what we would need to do to be able to take a look at sex differences in terms of the prevalence of imposter syndrome, to be able to make that suggestion that women end up publishing less because of what you're suggesting, okay? So that's what we would kind of have to take a look at there. So in any case, those are my comprehensive thoughts on this particular topic, because it's a very controversial topic, right? It's extremely controversial. And I'm not somebody who usually deals in that kind of social justice warrior stuff, right? That's not me. I have my own views on everything. I am totally politically independent, right? I am not here in the U.S. I am not a conservative. I am not a liberal. I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I am middle of the road, and I am purely evidence-based. You show me the peer-reviewed research literature on something, let me methodologically evaluate it. If I deem it to be sufficiently rigorous, I'm going to believe what the findings are, period. And that's how you guys should be as well, right? Nobody should be a lemming, right? Nobody should just use what culture seems to be teaching people and then just assume that that's the truth. That's foolishness, right? Everything should be evidence-based, okay? I'm a deep, deep believer in that. A lot of people ask me, how I kind of reconcile that with my faith, because I'm a Christian, I'm super into it, right? I was not a Christian, I was super atheist until I was 22, right? And now on my other channel, I give my testimony. So if anybody's interested in checking that out, place a question below. I'll go ahead and I'll respond to the comment, give you guys a link to that testimony. But in any case, thanks so much for watching, guys. Love you as always. Make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.